Everybody, how's it going? Welcome to Slidin into my DMs, part of the D4 network. This is the part of the network where it's basically a D&D talk show, where I chat with my DMs about D&D news and about rulings, and basically just, we chat about how to make sure that everybody at your table's having a great time. So happy to have you. Thanks for being here. Welcome. My name's Colby, and with me, as always, are my DMs. So we've got Corey, we've got Mr. Rogers, the Blackthorn himself, and Preston. So thanks for being here, guys. How's it going? Everyone doing good?
Starting on the drinking game.
Good. I've only got half of a cup of water today, so let's keep them light.
So I don't know if you can tell, like my voice is barely recovering now from, it's been 2 days, but I went to the Jazz game two nights ago. It was amazing, and I yelled myself hoarse. And so anyway, now
you cheered your team to victory.
I tell you what, like I have never in my life been in a louder, more like energized environment in my life. It was
awesome.
It was intense and amazing. For those who are basketball fans, I hope you enjoyed that. And for the other 99% of you, I'm making assumptions.
Welcome to the D&D channel that also talks about basketball.
I totally blanked out the last minute or two. What we're like.
Hey, jocks play with dice too sometimes.
That's right. That's right. Games are games, and I love all games, all types. Okay. Well, anyway, we've got some stuff to talk about today, but any announcements first? I guess just maybe quickly we'll plug episode 5 of Tales of Aneria went up, I guess 2 days ago as of this recording, and I think the sound quality is better than it's ever been due to some improved microphone and baffling and all kinds of stuff. So anyway,
sounds good.
Yeah, it was a fun one. That was a really fun one. I particularly loved episode 5 because I feel like I really got to shine, or shine is probably not the right word.
Yeah,
you were really dim.
Yes, I got to.
I was talking with Scott about darkness.
Yeah.
Because I was coming up with a custom monster that you guys will fight eventually, and I went. The template that I'm using, the custom monster had blind sight for the monster template, and I went, that's 2 custom monsters in a row that I would basically do that have some sort of counteract for darkness.
Yeah, there needs to be like some sort of like only every 5th encounter or something, stipulation or something.
So I was talking about it, and I'm like, why is this? Because so we started talking about like the back and forth that we had, where you were like trying to keep everybody out of darkness, but keep the enemies in darkness, and I realized that it doesn't matter who's in darkness unless they have true sight or devil sight.
Right. Because
it's a wash, right?
It's a wash. It's always a wash. Obviously, if you can't get like extra advantage or disadvantage,
right,
or anything like that.
And I think that's the biggest issue, right? So for those who aren't clear what we're talking about here's our quick ruling for the week. It'll be 30 seconds long. Yep. If you are in darkness and your enemy is in darkness, or in other words, if you can't see your enemy and they can't see you, then like the disadvantage that you would have by not being able to see them is countered by the advantage that you would have by them not being able to see you. Therefore, it's an attack as normal, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But of course, there's still potential, downfalls here. Like if there's a spell that says, on any target you can see, you can do X, right? Well, if the target's in darkness, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Or like, let's say you're a barbarian and you're recklessly attacking. Well, you have advantage, but it's countered by the disadvantage. And even though the disadvantage is countered by the one advantage, advantages don't stack, right. So you don't have advantage. And so like there's definitely still some things that are like, oh, this is a pain, for your party potentially.
Darkness in the way that Colby loves to use it is definitely I'm doing this for me, not for the party type ability.
Isn't that what Colby always does?
Yeah, true.
Just kidding. You are very selfless.
Out of my back.
You are a very selfless player.
What I do is I just simply encourage everyone around me to take blind fighting. You all need to adapt to my play style, and then we'll all be really powerful.
I'm just waiting for that day for you to get Shadow of Moyle, and then we don't have to worry about it.
I'm only
Corey, is it
three
too late
levels
to
away.
take back that? I want to put my dex back at 17 just so it bothers him for perpetuity.
I haven't locked it in yet, so you can do whatever you want for level 4.
I wouldn't even say that I'm like an optimizer, but that even bugs me.
Oh my gosh!
That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
So I was at sorry, we're getting off on a tangent here, but anyway, for those who are watching Tales of Aneria, hopefully you're enjoying this.
We never go long. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So we all leveled up at the end of our last play session, which you guys haven't seen yet. So we hit level 4, and my plan was to go Great Weapon Master because the numbers say that I need to go Great Weapon Master now. But my long-term plan was to get Elven Accuracy eventually too. And when I was sitting there staring at my character sheet and like just about to take that Great Weapon Master, I was just like, but if I take Elven Accuracy, then I won't have a 17 charisma anymore. And like that 17 charisma is like, it's just like the worst itch, like right in the small of your back that you can't reach. And I'm just like, I want to scratch it so bad.
And before we get too many comments of the actuallys, this is allowed by the DM. We know that
custom lineage.
Just because he's a dwell.
Oh, isn't it one of the other? We already talked about this.
Yeah, we talked about it somewhere.
There's another card.
We did.
Yeah, session 0. We talked about that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's enough about that.
We'll never talk about darkness again in this episode. That's for sure.
I can't wait. So today we wanted to, talk about the hot off the press mages of Strixhaven. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
Strixhaven. The newly announced Unearthed Arcana, and all it is basically is 5 new subclasses, but there's 5 new subclasses, and that's a lot of new subclasses in a single UA. And so we've decided to forego the quick ruling portion of the episode that we usually have, although we kind of just did a little one, and just jump right in to Strixhaven because there's a lot to go over.
Yeah.
And what I've done is I've asked Corey to give us an overview of what we have here. We can kind of chat about kind of a high level overview of the Unearthed Arcana, and then everybody's been assigned to take one subclass and kind of talk about it. But in the interest of time, I'll ask everyone to keep it high-ish level. We don't need to read like word for word everything, right? Just sort of
got this.
Give us the highlights, paraphrase.
Speed run, baby. Speed run.
Yeah, because I have to do 2, and one of them's boring, so that'll be quick. The other one's cool, and it's overpowered.
You're very obviously not
biased.
You don't belong to that college for sure.
No, I do.
Okay,
not.
but yeah. So let me go ahead and just grab the reins here.
Take it away.
So this week the D&D YouTube channel is doing their Week of Legend lore, leading up to, I think, like they have their D&D con or something like that they do every year coming up next week. And so on Monday, there's actually 2 books that have been announced. Only one has the Unearthed Arcana, but on Monday they announced the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is a Feywild adventure that you're going to be able to explore, which is really cool for anybody who likes pre-generated adventures. I'll probably pick it up just because I like picking up all the books.
Yeah.
Giant butterfly bears. What could go wrong?
Yep. And then the other thing is, of course, the one that we really want to talk about, which is the Strixhaven Curriculum of Chaos Adventure / source book, because it does come with these subclasses specifically for this adventure. Okay. And to give a little bit of background, Strixhaven, in the spirit of Wizards of the Coast kind of crossing over lately, is a Magic the Gathering universe. It is a realm. It is on a realm called Arcavios. The plane is called Arcavios. Yep. So basically, it is the premier magic college in all of the multiverse. Super exclusive. and there are 5 different colleges within it that kind of these 5
So
different
you've got
houses.
Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw,
basically,
Slytherin, and
Lore. The one in America, whatever that is.
It's just Filch's like his own little house that he made.
Right.
Squib House.
Yeah, Squib House. Ooh.
With the AUS.
Yeah.
Squib House.
It's like the Bajas.
German.
But the really cool thing is that each of these different colleges and each of these different subclasses that they're introducing are multiple class allowable.
Yeah.
Which is the really cool like trade away, instead of it just being like this is a wizard subclass. And because this is a magic school, this is also a wizard subclass. You know, it's this one is for 3 different classes in the spellcasting community, and this one's for 3 different other classes. And we'll get into each of those with the individual classes themselves. But there's a lot of really cool stuff. So basically what they say is as you level up, you would look on your base classes sheet, that little sheet that everybody ignores because they're just reading through the individual stuff. But it tells you when you would get a subclass feature. And at that point, you go in and you grab basically the next feature in the list. You get your first 2 when you hit that first level in that subclass. But everyone after that, you just have to meet the level prerequisites for that. And then you get that next tier up. And
I feel like
that makes sense. I think I must have missed that because I'm like, what? Why are they saying level 1+? What does that mean? That makes sense.
I feel like I need to talk about that because that feels to me like super manipulative or easily manipulable. I don't know if that's a word.
Malleable.
Easy to be manipulated. Like, excuse me. I mean, you know, it's like warlocks are balanced and sorcerers are balanced around the fact that they get their subclass at level 1, right? Mm-hmm. Mages are balanced around the fact that they get their subclass at level 2. And
I mean wizards, but yes.
Yes, sorry. I said mages.
I get it.
Bards are balanced around the fact that they get their subclass at level 3. And you know, there are definitely things in here that's like, ooh, I could take like one of those and one of those, or I want to be a wizard, but I'll take a 1-level sorcerer dip or warlock dip so I can get, you know, this other subclass here and then, you know, go full wizard. Now, of course, I can do that today, right? I could go into warlock 1 and take a hexblade and then go into my wizard subclass and take whatever. But
now you just have so many more options.
Yeah, particularly for these ones that are really strong. It's like, wow. So I mean, you could just do like a warlock 1 dip or a sorcerer 1 dip and pick up, you know, this Lorehold subclass or whatever, and then go into the caster class that you really want to specialize in. And again, yes, you could do that today, and a lot of people will take a one level hexblade dip because hexblade is really strong. Mm-hmm. But you know, just the fact that these are all sort of mage focused, I mean, I could almost see going like sorcerer 1 for one of them, warlock 1 for another one, and then like, you know, wizard 3 for a third or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I would say you definitely will see Blizzard come out and say not Blizzard, Wizards. Sorry, take a drink.
Oh boy.
I think you will see Wizards come out and say you can only have one of these subclasses at a time.
I wouldn't be surprised
because the idea of Strixhaven is you belong to one of these colleges. There is no multi-college there's
you
no
can't be a Hufflepuff and a Slytherin.
Yeah,
what are
exactly.
we doing?
I couldn't get a double major.
Nope.
Yeah.
You could. It's just you have to do a double major within your college.
I see it pretty easily thwarted by DMs. I see a lot of that where DM would be just like you said. You can't be Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw.
And it's definitely one of those things where if I was a DM and I was looking through these, I definitely would say, yeah, no, you can only pick one of these 5 subclasses. Like there's no way.
A really compelling argument at level 5 and then at level like 15 or something, but not like.
But as it exists right now, that's a possibility.
Well, yeah, and things are always changing between UA and official release, right? Assuming that it even makes it to official release. Although if they've announced the book already,
they've announced the book. This is just play testing in order to see what's overpowered and what's not.
Lorehold's overpowered.
Lorehold is definitely overpowered. But again, there's nothing to say that you can't be a level 15 conjuration wizard, and then take a 1 level dip into warlock to get that Lorehold College going, right?
Fair.
Because it's like, I only have to be 1 level in order to get that Lorehold stuff, and I guarantee you'll see that one specifically get nerfed. But again, that is no different than taking a 1 level dip into Hexblade with your Blade Singer or whatever. I don't watch your videos.
Probably be a sorcerer.
You just assume that every one of my videos has either Hexblade levels or Blade Singer levels.
Yep, exactly.
Well, now we know who's been commenting that on all the videos. It's just Corey. Lots of
I don't watch your
second YouTube account.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's get into the colleges then.
Yes, let's get into the colleges. So here's what we're going to do. We're not taking it in the order that they're announced in the UA. I'm going to talk about Silverquill, then Preston's going to talk about Witherbloom, then Dallin's going Prismari, and Corey's going Lorehold, and then I'm going to end with Quandrix. Did I pronounce all of those right? Yep. All right. Dallin doesn't need to do like a montage of me mispronouncing words for this video.
Only if it's organic, otherwise it's forced.
It's fake. You don't want to do that. Okay, so Silverquill, Mage of Silverquill.
You just were really excited and want to get to this one first, right?
Yes, I did. Mage of Silverquill, they hone the power of words. They channel the magic of light and shadow through words, whether spoken aloud, written, or signed through gestures. The words of a Mage of Silverquill bring salvation to their allies and despair to their enemies. So this is really cool. These guys are sort of like, you get options to be like support or like damage dealer or both, right? Obviously,
because it's what classes are it?
It's available to bards, warlocks, or wizards. And so it's kind of interesting because it gives you at level 1 anyway, you can the Eloquent Apprentice feature or the Silvery Barbs feature, but you have to choose one or the other. And the Eloquent Apprentice basically lets you learn a cantrip of your choice, but it has to be either Sacred Flame or Vicious Mockery. And the interesting thing about that is Vicious Mockery is pretty hard to come by. It's only available to bards otherwise until
they're awesome.
Right? Because they're awesome. Yes. And Vicious Mockery is a fun spell, and it doesn't count against the cantrips. It's automatically added to your spell list, which is great.
Nothing's better than killing a guy just like
with an insult. Yes, absolutely. No, I totally agree. And you get some proficiency options as well, some additional proficiencies. The problem is Silvery Barbs is way better. So immediately after a creature you can see within 60 feet of you succeeds on an attack roll, an ability check, or a saving throw, you can use your reaction to demoralize the creature. Unless the creature is immune to being charmed, it re-rolls the d20 and must use the lower roll. So basically it lets you give disadvantage to an enemy on an attack, on a save, or on an ability check. And then if they fail as a result of the disadvantage that you gave them, then like cool stuff happens. So then another creature, an ally within 60 feet of you, you can empower them. And then they basically get advantage on an attack roll, an ability check, or a saving throw within 1 minute. So it lasts for a minute even. And then they get to use the high result. So it's just really cool. And it is super bardy. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like using cutting words and bardic inspiration at the same time, right? So pretty strong. And then now you can only do it, let's see, once per long rest.
So important note on that though.
Yeah.
If the creature makes their attack, you don't expend it.
Correct. So it's once a creature fails, then you don't get to use it anymore. Yeah. So you do get to use it again if you expend a spell slot. It doesn't tell you how high the spell slot level needs to be. So you could use up your first level spell slots. And it's pretty powerful for a first level spell slot, in my opinion, causing disadvantage potentially and granting advantage to an ally. Really neat.
Yeah, it's a Bane or Bless. Plus,
Yeah, exactly. So then we get to what Corey was alluding to earlier, the Inky Shroud. So it's at level 6 plus feature. You learn the darkness spell, and you can cast it without expending a spell slot once per day anyway. So it's a nice little extra free casting. And then you can see through the darkness when you cast it. So it's like, darkness with Devil's Sight combo, or the sorcerer, the shadow sorcerer can do this as well. If they spend meta magic points to cast the darkness spell, they can see through it, which is just really nice. Because again, I mean, that's advantage on all of your attacks and disadvantage for enemies on all their attacks against you. Of course, there are drawbacks to darkness, as we have discussed, but it's potentially very powerful. And when a creature you can see starts its turn in the darkness, you can deal 2d10 psychic damage to that creature. There's no limit to the number of times that this can happen, supposedly.
So saving throw associated?
Yeah, it just says when they start its turn in the darkness, you deal 2d10 psychic damage to them.
That's awesome.
It's awesome, and it's overpowered. Yes.
There's no way that removes.
That's got to be
for
nerfed.
sure. It'll get nerfed.
Doesn't Shadow of Moyle do 2d10 on
only if they hit you?
Yeah.
And I think it's 2d6.
What is that, like 12 damage on average? Something like that?
11.
11 damage on average. I mean, that's not crazy, but that's good.
At level 6,
yeah,
right, and again,
and you can cast it once for free.
Darkness is 15 feet,
yeah,
from you, and it doesn't say. It just says when a creature you can see starts its turn in the darkness. It doesn't say that like there's a limit to how many times you can do this, to the number of creatures. It doesn't say once per turn. It's just like, I mean, it's like Spirit Guardians, right?
Yeah,
kind of. I mean, it's really strong, and I'm sure it will get nerfed.
You're going to see that become either a reaction. You use your reaction to deal the damage, or it's going to be like 1d6.
The damage will come down. Yeah. You can only do it proficiency times per day, something, right? So they'll have to rein that in for sure.
Yeah. I like that you can cast it without expending a spell slot. And that goes into the whole lore behind Silverquill, just to kind of geek out about magic and everything. Yeah. A lot of their artwork, if you go look at it, they use and conjure magic in the form of like ink, like flowing off of them, or they create like an ink spike, or like an element, not like an elemental, but like a familiar made out of ink or something like that.
Okay.
They're all about like that kind of like darkness and that while at the same time being very eloquent. So I think they're really cool.
Yeah.
That's
like
very
Sai from Naruto.
That's very flavorful. Okay, so their level 10 plus feature is called Infusion of Eloquence, and it's also really strong. So basically, when you cast a spell that deals damage, you can change it to psychic or radiant damage, which in and of itself is very powerful, right? Psychic especially, and radiant actually both are very low on the number of monsters who have resistance to this damage type, and hardly any have resistance to both, right? But then it gets better. So any creature damaged by the spell takes extra damage equal to your proficiency bonus, and you can either frighten them if you chose psychic damage, or charm them if you chose radiant damage. Now, you can only do this proficiency bonus times per day, but still, there's no qualifier on there for like number of targets. So as far as I can tell, reading this, like I could cast a fireball, but I could turn it into a psychic ball, and everyone that it hit would be feared. Gosh. It's like
crazy. That's
and
better
they don't.
than...
Do they get a saving throw on that?
So no, there's no saving throw. And now it only lasts for one round.
Still.
Imagine hitting like a group of enemies with a fireball, and any that survive are just like, "You're the most beautiful person ever. Thank you for attacking me."
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's funny.
No, that's crazy.
So this is also overpowered, I think.
Yes.
I can see this getting nerfed. But I love the idea of casting a big AoE psychic ball that fears everybody who it does damage to.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, super cool, fun, unlikely to stand past the Unearthed Arcana phase, I think. Okay, so as for the level 14 plus feature, it's called Word of Power, and it's really strong as well. So basically, you get two options. Deadly Despair or Selfless Invocation. They're similar, but basically the way Deadly Despair works is that when you use silvery barbs that we talked about earlier, right? That thing where you force disadvantage, right? When you use silvery barbs and as a result, the creature fails, then you can give the target vulnerability to one damage type of your choice until the start of your next turn.
Dang.
And as I discussed in my Death Knight episode, ding ding, vulnerability is so powerful. Like, it's better than a crit, right? Because all damage is doubled, including any modifiers that you put on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, now, of course, this is only
So
for
good.
one damage type. So
And is that
slashing
exclusive
damage
to
or
for
whatever.
source from you, or is that for any source?
No, it lasts until the start of my next
So
turn.
any source. So if you did, that's
but
crazy.
so keep in mind, here's how Silvery Barbs works, is that you use it as your reaction when your enemy tries to do something, right?
Mhm.
So make an attack roll, make an ability check. So, but and then it only lasts until the start of your next turn. So so most of the time you'd be doing this as like an alley-oop for another basketball reference, for one of your friends, right? You give them disadvantage when you know like a big attack is coming.
You set up your.
You give them vulnerability.
Yeah.
When you know a big attack is coming. But definitely, of course, like, you guys know me, I'm already thinking like, okay, if I had action surge and I cast a spell that forced a saving throw, then they tried to make their saving throw. I use silvery barbs. If they fail their saving throw as a result, I can action surge and hit them with something huge that they now have vulnerability to.
Yep.
Good for a Nova build. Yeah.
So that was an alley-oop to myself. I just threw it off the backboard.
Way to go! Not including your party again. Nobody gets these sports references, guys. Let's move on.
Plenty of people get the sports references.
I know, it's just me.
If you get them, please comment so we feel validated.
Yes, exactly. I know Rob Vera gets them because we're always talking basketball. But sorry, there's one other thing. Let me just really quickly mention Selfless Invocation. Similarly, when a creature you can see within 60 feet of you takes damage, so one of your friends, then you can basically give them resistance. And so instead of vulnerability, you're giving them resistance to that damage.
But that one says that you take psychic damage equal to the damage that that creature takes.
Right.
Wow.
So when they get resistance, you take half, basically. So it's more like warding bond. That's what it's called. Anyway, it functions similarly and it's quite strong. So, Corey, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no limit that I can see on these. The limit for the resistance one is obviously that you're taking the damage too.
No, this is really strong for like a tank or support type build for sure. You're cutting your friend's damage in half essentially and taking it on yourself. Yeah. So anyway, that is that's the first of the 5.
We'll try and
that's Silverquill.
We'll try and be brief.
Hopefully in post-production I edited that down to much longer than what our conversation ended up being.
Perfect.
So yeah, Preston, why don't you tell us about Witherbloom?
Perfect. So, have you ever thought of yourself as wanting to be a druid or warlock and be able to control the ebb and flow of, every day, especially when I'm sitting at my desk typing? Man,
I really wish I could just turn into a rat right now.
It's perfect. So essentially, when I was reading through this class, my brain kind of went towards Warcraft 2 and the Death Knights and kind of the Death Coil and that whole motif of being able to they feed off that life force between life and death. And this one specifically, that's kind of where the whole focus lies, specifically for druid and warlocks. In this particular subclass, when you first kind of dip into it, you're going to get Witherbloom spells and Essence Chap as the two kind of your first introductory kind of bonuses for doing this. The first one being your Witherbloom spells. You'll learn a cantrip, Spare the Dying, as a first level spell, and Cure Wounds, as well as Inflict Wounds. So this is...
And that's big. Inflict Wounds is hard to come by, and it's a very powerful. Another self plug, as I discussed in the burst damage episode. Inflict Wounds is, 3d10 at level 1 is about as good as it gets for single target burst damage.
And if you don't want to do a cleric and you want to do kind of still do that death domain or death cleric type motif, this I feel like squarely fits in that without having to go cleric. Then you also have Essence Tap. This is basically, as a bonus action, you can draw on a reservoir of life essence. And in that, there's a couple of things in here that I thought were kind of interesting. One was Overgrowth. And basically, if you choose that benefit, on subsequent turns, while this particular benefit lasts, you can expend and roll one of your hit dice. So let's say you're playing a tank, and maybe you're a bear druid, a moonkin druid, and you're trying to tank everything. And if you're a dragonborn and you're breathing fire, now you can also continue to over damage. Cool. It's pretty crazy. Yeah. Oh, sorry for the roll on the Overgrowth. That's your roll, the roll number plus it'll add your spellcasting ability modifier on top of that.
Nice.
So it makes it a little bit better than just straight hit dice. You have your Withering Strike, and when you deal damage, you can change that damage to necrotic, or you can ignore resistance to necrotic. This is the one that kind of reminded me of that Death Cleric build, where you're just constantly trying to find sources of necrotic damage to pour on.
That's potentially really potent if you can stack it, say. Yeah. Well, there's a little combo with Lorehold that I wanted to talk about later, so I'll wait till we get to Corey.
So the other part of this is if you like to do tinctures, you like to make potions, maybe you're an alchemical whiz kid. This also allows you to kind of take that together where during a long rest, if you can finish the long rest, then you're able to you can use an herbalism kit essentially to create different brews for this. What it has here is you have fortifying, quickening, and toxifying. The first one, fortifying. Basically, you choose a damage type, and you can you choose from cold, fire, necrotic, poison, and radiant. And anyone who drinks that will basically gain resistance for that damage type for 1 hour, which could potentially, like, if you know where you're going and you're coming into a fight with a frost giant or something, that could come in clutch pretty good. The quickening, you can drink this brew, or you can administer it to somebody as an action, and they will regain basically 2d6 hit points. So it's kind of like a free healing potion.
Yeah.
Nice.
And on top of that, it also has the ability to remove a disease or condition. So it's kind of like the Paladin's lay on hands, where you're able to do a little bit extra.
Yeah, and you could do, it was proficiency bonus number of these, right?
Yeah,
per long rest.
As long as you can complete your long rest.
Yeah, when you finish the long rest. Yeah.
As long as you have that, and you have an herbalism kit, you have to have both those.
Right.
So, the third one, toxifying. It's essentially a poison that you can apply to weapons, ammunition, that kind of stuff. When you shoot it, it'll last when it hits the creature within 1 hour. So after an hour, it dissipates and is no longer useful. It'll deal 2d6 poison damage, and they'll have to do a con save or be poisoned for 1 minute. So that could be also potentially nice. I don't know. For me, I've poison stuff. I've never felt.
There's a lot of resistance.
It's tough because it takes a lot. It takes a lot, and it takes a lot of your action economy to use poison the way that it works in 5e. Now, the nice thing about this is that the poison lasts for an hour. Now, it takes an action, but it lasts for an hour. Whereas a lot of times poison will be for like 1 minute or something like that. So you don't have, you basically have to use it in combat. This, it's like, if you know combat's coming, then you can dip it in.
Yeah, at level 10, you get Witherbloom Adept. And in here, your flow to that, you're tapping into that life force flow becomes a little bit deeper, a little bit more kind of mature. And once per turn, when you deal necrotic damage or restore hit points using a spell, the target takes additional damage or gains additional hit points equal to your proficiency bonus.
That's pretty cool.
That's nice.
It's a nice little, nice little extra bonus on there.
Yeah. I mean, it's similar to a lot of other features that other subclasses get, and it doesn't come until level 10. But, the fact that it works on heals or damage is pretty unique,
kind of nice,
and potentially powerful.
Which again, I like, the thing I like about that is that the thematically, just that ebb and flow and being able to control that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Last one, Withering Vortex. It's at level 14. When you cast a spell, it deals necrotic damage to any number of creatures that aren't undead or constructs specifically. You choose a creature that took the damage, and you can drain the amount of life energy equal to half the damage dealt to the chosen creature. And basically, one creature other than yourself within 30 feet can regain that. So it's kind of like your life transference spell.
So it's almost exactly the same as Vampiric Touch.
Yeah,
Vampiric Touch.
Really cool. How about how about you do the alley-oop, set up necrotic vulnerability, double that damage, instantly get one of your party members from 0 to 100% life.
Yeah.
Double the
sick.
damage and therefore
Be
double the
sick.
healing, right?
It'd be really cool.
Yeah.
In fact, so here's a fun combo for you. You're a death cleric using your channel divinity, which lets you add extra necrotic damage when you make an attack, right? So you cast Vampiric Touch, which does a bunch of necrotic damage, plus your channel divinity, which adds some additional damage, plus Witherbloom Adept, which adds your proficiency bonus in necrotic damage, right? So all of these sources of necrotic damage that would stack.
So much.
And if you do it with if you do it with Vampiric Touch says the exact same thing. It says you drain life and then you regain half of that in necrotic. Well, can I do Withering Vortex and Vampiric Touch on the same turn? And now I would regain as much health as I dealt. And you'd have all of these ways to stack, that necrotic damage.
New build, the Life Drinker.
Yeah,
I think this is the most balanced out of all of the colleges. I think it doesn't feel overpowered, but it doesn't feel super underpowered either.
I agree.
It fits really well within the lore. I think it fits really well within like the idea of being a druid or a warlock subclass and kind of that like we said, that ebb and flow of life. But I don't feel like anything in here is making me go, oh my gosh, they need to nerf this immediately.
Even this Withering Vortex Vampiric Touch, combo stacking. I think I crunched the numbers on it already. And at level 16, when you would be a Death Cleric 2 and a Withering Vortex, a Witherbloom Mage 14, right? So you're casting Vampiric Touch at an 8th level spell, the highest that you could do at that time. I mean, we're talking 42 damage to a creature on average and regaining 42 damage to yourself.
That's crazy.
Which is nice. Now, of course, like you say, Corey, if you could optimize that further and find a way to maybe set up vulnerability and things like that, then it's like, well, 84 dealt and 84 returned. Now we're talking. But anyway,
that's crazy.
It would take a lot of resources. It would take a lot of resources to make all of that happen, right? And it doesn't happen until fairly late level. So
It's pretty
doesn't feel too overpowered to me.
Yeah.
And what scenario do you find yourself in that you need 82 heals? Probably not all that often.
I just love
it.
it.
It comes in clutch. It's nice.
When you need it, it's awesome to have. But it's like one of those things probably not going to happen all that often.
I just love the idea, again, because I love to build characters like this that like are around sort of a theme like that, right?
Yeah.
And say like this is like the ultimate like life drinker or whatever, like you said, Corey, and their whole thing is like regaining hit points every time they deal damage, and like they're just really hard to kill, and that's just cool and fun and potentially powerful.
The leech. They call me the leech.
So speaking of classes, subclasses that are not particularly well balanced, in my opinion, let's go to Mr. Rogers, the Mage of Prismari, who I think is I'm a little underwhelmed by, but maybe I missed something. So tell us what you think.
All right, so it's available for Druid, Sorcerer, or Wizard. And just real quick, the Mages of Prismari use surges of elemental energy to express who they are and how they see the world. To them, magic and motion are one and the same. Both are exhibitions of raw creativity, through which masterpieces are made. So basically, it's just taking the elements and adding a little flair to what you do.
They're the dance college as far as like their art goes and everything too. Like they're very much like the performance art type college. So
so when you take this subclass, you get two things here. So you get creative skills. So you gain proficiency in 2 of the following skills. So you choose acrobatics, athletics, nature, or performance. You get 2 of those. And then you get kinetic artistry. So you can dash as a bonus action. When you take this bonus action, choose one of the following additional effects. And then it gives you a couple of things you can do. So you can do Boreal Sweep, which is icy water swirls around you until the end of your turn. You can move across the surface of water as if it were harmless solid ground. Additionally, when you leave a space within 5 feet of a creature, you can force that creature to make a strength saving throw against your spell DC. If they fail, they're knocked prone. You can only do this once per turn, obviously. Scorching Whirl is the other option. Flames Wreathe your step. Once before the end of your turn, you can force each creature within 5 feet of you to make a dex save against your spell save DC. On a failure, they take 1d4 plus your spellcasting modifier and fire damage. So just a little quick fire burst as you run away.
Yep.
So nothing crazy so far.
Or as you run in.
Or as you run in. Yeah. Thunderlight Jaunt is the last option here. You take on a nimble lightning form. Until the end of your turn, you can move through the space of other creatures, and you do not provoke opportunity attacks. If you end your turn inside a creature's space, you push to the nearest unoccupied space. So basically, this is just a nice, if there's like a hallway and you need to get out and there's people, you can just bamf through everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
It feels a lot like the Guild Wars 2 sorceress, like how you'd be able to switch between the different forms as you're doing different things.
Yeah. And then you can do this as a bonus action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. So it's
now
limited.
Okay, now here's my question. Okay, so 2 questions actually. So now at the beginning, it says, when you subsequently reach a level in your class that gives you a subclass feature, you gain 1 feature of your choice from the options presented here. Each feature has a class level prerequisite. So the way I read that is that I can choose either creative skills or kinetic artistry, but not both of them.
That's possible because it says here, upon selecting the major Prismari subclass, you gain 2 features, creative skills and kinetic artistry. So I think you get both.
You get both. Then what do you suppose it's talking about when it says?
So basically, what it's saying is just,
I think
you gain 1 feature of your choice from the options presented here.
It's dumb that they word it that way when there aren't option choices, because each of the classes specifically say when you gain your first level, you get these 2 first, and then it just basically is whatever the next one is for that.
I wonder if it was just copy and paste error.
Well, because so
just took it from another template or something.
If that's true, then I may have misspoke earlier when I was talking about the Mage of Silverquill.
From Conjure Woodland Creatures.
Because I talked about, you could either do Eloquent Apprentice or Silvery Barbs, but the wording is the same.
So I think you get both.
When you subsequently reach a level in your class that gives you a subclass feature, you gain 1 feature of your choice from the options presented here. And so, I assumed that you had to choose between those, but maybe not. Maybe
I read it as you get both of those for dipping into the class or into the subclass.
Okay. Well, let's assume that that's the case.
Cool.
Okay, so here was my second question, though. With Boreal Sweep, right?
Yes.
This you potentially knock somebody prone. It says when you leave a space within 5 feet of a creature, you can force them to make a strength saving throw, or they're knocked prone. So what comes first? The opportunity attack that they'd be taking against you as you leave. Yeah, so I'm just kind of wondering, okay, do I try to knock them prone before the opportunity attack or after?
As a DM, that's how I would rule it. Always for your player's favor first. I would say, okay, try and knock him prone, and if he's prone,
otherwise it seems like, well, I never want to do this because it only gives me a benefit if I move away from someone.
Yeah, and if you're a wizard, you're already squishy as can be, so that sucks. Yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway, something to hopefully will be clarified.
Yeah, for sure. Over at level 6+, you get favored medium. So you've honed your form of elemental expression to best suit your ideas. Choose one of the following damage types: cold, fire, or lightning. You gain resistance to the damage type. That's nice. Additionally, when you cast a spell using a spell slot that deals the chosen damage type, you emit a spectacular aura of artistry, which extends 5 feet out from you in each direction. And essentially, it's just an aura. And now anybody in that aura has resistance to that chosen damage type as well.
Yeah.
So kind of a little pseudo paladin feature there.
Yeah.
So,
again,
and you can change your damage type.
If you're a wizard,
yeah,
you can change it a long rest. Yeah. Nice. If you're a wizard, I seriously doubt you're going to be running into battle and doing a little aura for people to stay around you. Like it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, and a 5 foot aura, like
you got to be real close
for a character who's probably kind of standing at the back and not around a bunch of their allies. Like I don't know, it feels a little meh to me.
To me, it should be probably 15 feet in each direction, I think, but it is what it is. Okay, so then level 10 plus, you get focused expression. Honing your talents, you skillfully infuse your motions with even more potent expressions of elemental might. Once per turn, when you deal damage to at least one target, you gain an additional effect determined by the damage type that you chose for your favored medium feature, which again, you can change at a long rest. Mm-hmm. So if you chose cold, one of the targets of your choice takes an additional 1d6 cold damage and must make a con save against your spell DC. On a failed save, their speed is reduced by 10. You can only do this once per round. For fire, one of the targets of your choice takes an additional 1d6 fire damage. Fortifying flames and dance around your creature of your choice within 30 feet of you, and they gain 1d6 temporary hit points. So that's kind of nice. And then if you chose lightning, one of the targets of your choice takes an additional 1d6 lightning damage, and must make a dex save against your spell DC. On a failed save, they aren't able to take reactions.
Yeah,
that's actually huge. That's cool.
This is my favorite feature of this subclass for sure, and not because these things are particularly powerful. They're good. I mean, but it's the first time that I know of that we actually get some sort of like, depending on your damage type, like cool things happen. Ability in all of 5e. Like there are some cold spells that will slow targets. There are some fire spells that will cause them to burn for additional damage. There are some lightning spells that will cause them to not have a reaction, but there aren't any like subclass features that make you feel like I am like a master of this element type. And now like every time I do damage, and I'm going to try and build my spell list around like lots of different cold type damage or lots of different fire or lightning type damage so that I can get this benefit all the time, right?
And then on top of it, you get to change it at a long rest. So you can be like, I know we're going into a battle with trolls and I've done my homework, so I'm going to make sure I can do all these things with fire.
It's cooler than like the Tempest Cleric where you're just like stuck with lightning and
I think it would be cooler if it was like every time you cast a spell of this damage type, you get this additional effect. But cool. I do like it being a sort of like based on which element you decide to evoke that day kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty cool.
This is very much a shape-shifting druid build. Like subclass almost, right? Like you're going into wild shape form and you're using these additional abilities to help your allies or kind of weave around combat a little bit better kind of thing. That's the big feeling that I get is I would want to play a druid that shape shifts. And
I mean, every time you deal damage, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
And then lastly, for this one, a level 14 plus, they get impeccable physicality. So your relentless dedication and training have instilled an outstanding sense of precision and grace in your art. You gain proficiency in dexterity saving throws, which you might already have. Whatever. Additionally, when you make a dex saving throw, you can treat a d20 roll of 9 or lower as a 10. So I think some rogues get that already anyway, some of the rogue subclasses.
Yeah. Well,
it's not that impressive, but it's okay.
It's hard. It makes it harder to fail.
I will say this: the most common saving throw that you have to save against for all spells that do damage in D&D are dexterity saving throws. That is the most common save that you'll see. Now, that doesn't mean that it's the most common save that monsters that the enemy spellcasters have in their spell arsenal are necessarily going to be casting at you. But so it is. I mean, it's not bad, especially if you have something like the rogue's evasion, right?
Yeah,
or the monk's evasion, I guess.
Sad that it's that's your highest level feature.
It's not amazing.
Like, it feels like
it definitely does feel a little like oof.
Yeah, like level 20 bard. Oof.
Yeah, it's definitely the weakest of all of the subclasses that they introduced here for sure.
I think so, and that's why I gave it to Dallin, because he is the strongest of all of us.
We need to nerf Dallin.
That's right.
We gotta nerf me.
That's right. Yep. All right, so let's go from the most underwhelming and underpowered to the most overpowered. I don't know. Silverquill was good.
It's pretty good.
But I think Lorehold is, well, we'll see.
They're the big daddy.
Yeah, let's talk about it, Corey. Let's tell us about Lorehold.
So mages of Lorehold are particularly concerned with the forces that underlie and drive history. Drawing inspiration from the scholars and adventurers of old, they manifest the arcane power of the past through ethereal dioramas and fantastical battle prowess. Lorehold mages are often found with a long-dead spirit summoned at their side, for who better than to learn ancient history from than one who has experienced it firsthand. They're basically the Indiana Jones College, in case you wanted to be your own little treasure hunter. I think they're fantastic.
Splash little Ghostbusters in there.
Yeah, exactly. So first, you get Lorehold spells. You get Sacred Flame, Cantrip, and Comprehend Languages at the first level, just into your spell book or as part of your spells, which I think is awesome. Comprehend Languages is one that it's always nice to have that as a bonus. And a lot of the spells that you get are very much just like exploration spells. Things like Knock, Locate Object, Speak with Dead, Arcane Eye, Stone Shape, Legend Lore, but
don't forget Spirit Guardian.
Oh, that's what I was just about to say. Is this? So it's available to bards, warlocks, and wizards, and you get Spirit Guardians at 5th level, my friends.
Strong.
Which is very hard to come by. You have to take your cleric dip if you want to have Spirit Guardians at all. Normally, it's bard, warlock, or wizard gets to be Lorehold.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you could get Spirit Guardians via like a Divine Soul Sorcerer previously, but yeah, I mean, a wizard. Like I'm already envisioning an area of effect.
Blade Singer
Wizard with Spirit Guardians. Blade Singer would be fun, but
Blade Singer with Spirit Guardians.
concentration. You need your concentration for so many.
That's
things.
so true.
But anyway,
but I think more importantly than the spells at level 1, you get the greatest healer possible at level 1, and it will be nerfed, I guarantee you this. So you get what's called the Ancient Companion. Basically, when you finish a short or a long rest, you can summon the spirit of a long dead ancestor or a ghost into a statue, and it has to be like a statue within 10 feet of you. It's a freestanding statue. So if you don't have a statue nearby, if your GM's a jerk, sorry, better pick up like a sculptor's tools or something.
Insert Mulan joke here.
And it becomes a guardian that follows along and fights with you. It's got 14 AC +2 if you pick the warrior class out of the 3 classes that you get to choose from, which we'll get to the others in just a moment here. And it has HP equal to 5 +5 for each level in the class that you have taken the subclass.
Is it considered a construct or undead?
It is a construct, medium construct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It does have an interesting thing. It has the Ancient Fortitude, which is similar to the zombies' Undead Fortitude, in that if it takes damage, unless it's a critical hit, it rolls a con save to see if it drops to 1 HP instead.
Cool.
Now, you can spend a spell slot to help it recover hit points if you want. It perishes at 0, and then you can resummon it. But I think the important thing are the 3 features.
Well, and you can resummon it on a short rest, which means that, like,
if your GM kills it,
it's like
who needs
doesn't cost you any resources. It's just, and then you're gonna summon them back in another short rest. So
it's not Marty McFly where your photo starts destroying yourself. Okay.
So you command it on your turn as a bonus action, typical companion stuff that you see. The 3 different classes that you can pick from for these Ancient Guardians are Warrior, which gives you +2 bonus to its AC, and then a reaction that whenever a creature within 5 feet of the companion makes a strength or dexterity saving throw, the companion imposes itself between the creature and the danger, and the creature can add a D4 to the number on that saving throw. So it's like a limited bless for that.
I mean, it's like, and it's just for strength and dex saves though.
And then it also has a Spirit Strike, which is a melee weapon attack that deals 1d8 plus your +2 plus your proficiency bonus force damage. And again, that's using your melee spell attack attack bonus, and you can use that as a bonus action.
And yeah, exactly. You need your bonus action, right?
But you can also make it the Sage, which gives it, or basically says that within 15 feet of the companion, you and your allies gain +2 to intelligence and wisdom checks, flat out, like every check, which is great. Yeah.
I mean, there's not a. Sorry, I was going to say that's
obviously
kind of mostly RP. But not always,
or like history checks, perception.
But like also like for counterspell, you're using an intelligence check when you cast that to try to, to try and outdo an enemy spell.
It also just makes you more perceptive, which I think is one of the big parts of that. Like being able to have a +2 bonus on perception checks is pretty good. And then the big one, the big kahuna, in my opinion, is the Healer's Light, which is the other action that you get if you pick the healer portion. And it's an action, it's your bonus action, and you tell it to heal somebody within 15 feet of you for 1d8 plus your proficiency bonus temporary hit points. So it's not a full heal,
Right.
Important to note, but it is basically a minimum of like 3 temporary hit points every single round.
As a bonus
Nova
action,
Shield.
as a bonus action,
As a bonus
you
action.
are giving on average at level 1 6.5 temporary hit points
That could
to
double someone's hit points.
any
That
of
double wizard
your
hit points.
allies.
Yep.
That's really strong.
That's
And
crazy.
it only gets better. So at level
Yes.
6, you get to pick. You get additional bonuses based on which guardian that you've selected. So if you selected the healer guardian, you get your hit point maximum increased by an amount equal to your level in this class, and you regain that number of hit points. And then whenever you regain hit points from a spell, you get an additional 1d8.
Right.
That's
Now it is only to you here.
But still.
That makes you quite beefy.
Yep. The Sage, if you pick the Sage, you get advantage on ability checks using Arcana, History, Nature, and Religion, basically lore stuff. And then once per turn, when you deal damage to a creature with a spell of first level or higher, you get to deal an additional 1d8 force damage to that creature.
Which I love, of course.
Yep. And I thought you'd like the Warrior the best.
The Warrior is even stronger, but well, potentially, especially when you get to level 10. But anyway, the Sage, I mean, an extra D8, again, that's not unique, and it's using a spell of first level or higher. So, there's definitely that qualifier in there, but you could stack that with other things like a genie warlock, one level warlock dip, and you get I think it's a D8 once per turn when you hit a creature with an attack. So if you're casting a spell that's an attack spell, like Scorching Ray or something, now you could do an extra 2d8, for a single, every once per turn. It's not bad.
And then the last one is Warrior, which says that if you use your action to cast a cantrip, you can also use that same action to do a weapon attack. You basically get an extra attack as a wizard, as a bard, as a warlock.
What?
This is
Dude, okay,
this
so
is
Warlock, Hexblade. Hexblade, Warlock.
No. Hold on. We're not done. You
So
also
strong.
deal an extra 1d8 radiant damage too.
with the
Oh
attack.
my gosh.
So this is
Strong.
this is the Blade
So
Singers. This is the Blade Singer's 6th level ability, right?
Mhm.
You get to make an attack and cast. I mean, it's not quite, because when you use your action to cast a cantrip, so you're not taking the attack action,
No.
right? And so the difference here would be like if I'm a Blade Singer and I'm dual wielding, for example, right? And I've got Shadow Blade in one hand and a short sword in my offhand. I'm taking the attack action. I go Shadow Blade, and then I get to go. I get to go. If I have extra attack, I go Shadow Blade, offhand, with my short sword, and then cantrip if I wanted. This is saying you're using your action to cast a cantrip. Then you get to make
A weapon attack.
Right.
full
So
weapon attack.
you're not getting two.
But I wouldn't get to use 2-weapon
Right.
fighting in that scenario because I
Right.
didn't take the attack action. That said, there's no reason why there's no reason why if I say took a multi-class into sorcerer and got quicken spell, right? You could cast a cantrip, and that cantrip would be Booming Blade, and you get to make a weapon attack as part of Booming Blade, and it does extra damage if you're beyond level 5, if you're level 5 or higher anyway. And then now you get a weapon attack for free too. And by the way, that weapon attack does an extra 1d8 of damage. And then I could quicken spell, Booming Blade, cantrip, right? And get a third weapon attack that does extra damage. So I'm getting 3 attacks in a turn at level 6, which isn't so crazy unheard of, but it's just like, well, like I had to take 6 levels in Blade Singer to get that. Blade Singer is better anyway. Blade Singer is better than everything. So
That's so crazy.
but yeah, it's good. It's potentially very strong.
And then it only gets better from here because we get our level 10 ability, which is called War Echoes.
Mhm.
And it says that once per turn, when a creature you can see hits a target with an attack roll, you can force that target to make a wisdom saving throw.
Mhm.
And if they fail, they gain vulnerability to that attack's damage and all damage of that type until the start of your next turn.
Right. So okay. So
or until the end of the target's next turn. Sorry.
Right. So on a failure, the target becomes vulnerable to one of the damage types dealt by the attack. This vulnerability lasts until the end of the target's next turn and affects the damage dealt by the triggering attack. So, so the key here would be to find a way to make all of your damage that you do on an attack the same damage type, right? So they do have vulnerability to all of the damage, because a lot of times, for example, like these ways of like stacking damage on your attacks are like, you know, you might be doing a weapon that's doing slashing damage and adding a d6 for hex, but the hex amount of the damage is not slashing damage, right? It's force, I believe. No, necrotic. Anyway, whatever it is. And so it's only giving you vulnerability. But if you were to go, and I alluded to I was going to do this earlier, like if you, for example, went with the Witherbloom, like Preston was talking about earlier, you take a single level dip as a warlock, right? Witherbloom warlock, and you can change all of your damage to necrotic for 1 minute. Then now all of the damage that I do is of the same damage type. And if I say, well, yep, I'm going to make them vulnerable to, let me think about it really quick, necrotic damage. Then like, and I have all of these ways of like stacking lots of extra damage on top of each other, and they're vulnerable to all of it.
And then important to note is that you can use that reaction a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Right. So
it's not
infinite, but
but it's still
what is at this point, right?
It's really strong.
Yeah. Cool. And then we get our level 14. Infinite. Love is infinite, indeed. The power of love will always prevail.
Power of friendship.
The level 14 ability, I'm sure, is Colby's least favorite ability out of all of these. Because it says in the first line, it says, through steeping yourself in the chaotic whims of history. And I was like, oh, he's not going to like this one.
Why is history filled with chaotic whims? Like this happened. How's that chaotic? I mean,
sticking up all your victims' heads on spikes and sticking out of your castle, that's pretty chaotic.
That's pretty chaotic. You never know what's going to happen in history.
That's chaotic evil. That has nothing to do with...
That's the thing about history, is it's ever changing and you don't know what's going to happen next.
It's very whimsical.
History is not ever changing. History is very much like done and set in stone.
/S, apparently. I need to put at the end of that. Anyway, so you basically, as a bonus action, you can enter a state of coronal chaos. And when you enter the state, and at the start of each of your subsequent turns while in the state, you gain one of the following benefits of your choice. And you can either gain luck, which allows you to roll a d6 and add the number to the roll for any saving throw against damage that you are subjected to. You can do resistance, which gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. And then you can get swiftness, which gives you 15 extra feet of movement speed, and you don't provoke opportunity attacks when you move, which is really cool. You basically have disengage all the time. The benefit lasts until the start of your next turn, and then you cannot choose the same benefit twice in a row. So you can't have swiftness and then swiftness again. And then it lasts for 1 minute or ends early if you're incapacitated.
And it's only once per day, right? Unless you spend a 4th level spell slot.
Exactly.
So I mean that's a pretty good buff. It doesn't require concentration. Right. And so like every turn you are either like getting to add a d6 to a saving throw, or getting resistance to damage, or getting 15 feet and free disengage of movement. Like it's a little random, like, inevitably you're going to use luck one turn, and then on your next turn, you're going to have to need a saving throw, and you'll be like, now I'm just resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and they cast fireball.
You whims of history.
The chaotic whims of history.
I think overall you're going to see a lot of nerfs to this.
All right. So here we go. We're coming down the home stretch. I've got a nice line of dotted light on myself, and I'm just going to leave it there.
If you've been here this long, thanks for sticking with it.
Yeah, exactly. The sun's getting real low. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Mage of Quandrix, which really is apt, I think, for me to do this one as well, because for those who become Mages of Quandrix, math and magic go hand in hand. That's pretty much like the synopsis for D&D Optimized.
It is the study of numeromancy is what they call it in Strixhaven, apparently.
So you get a number of features, of course. At level 1+, you get a couple of things. You get some additional spells, guidance, guiding bolt, some nice ones, enlarge, reduce, spike growth. The only one I think that's unique here, because it's only available for wizards and sorcerers, and I think wizards and sorcerers have all of these, if I'm not mistaken, but they don't get Aura of Vitality, and that's a potentially very strong, I think, concentration healing spell.
The thing that we keep running into here is multi-classing, and I don't think any of these subclasses are intended to be multi-classes. You're intended to be a wizard or a sorcerer who goes to this college, right? And that's it. And that, like, you're not like, because you'd have to be a wizard and then dip into Clockwork Soul Sorcerer, but then it's like, how far do you go with that? Like, sorry, I held off for as long as I could. I don't think you're supposed to multi-class with these classes, and
yet there is no prohibition against it.
There is in my games now.
Well, it's UA, so I mean, they're not in the game in the first place
yet,
right? But anyway, so you get a nice expanded spell list. You get this cool functions of probability feature, which basically says that it gives me a diminishing return function or a supplemental function, which lets me, so like when I cast a spell using a spell slot that targets at least one creature, then I can add one of these two effects, right? The diminishing function is nice. It's kind of like a Bane spell in that it would subtract a d6 from the creature's next attack, or supplemental function, which lets me add a d6 to an ally within 30 feet on either an attack or one of their saving throws. So it's kind of nice. It kind of gives you either a debuff or a buff, right? Exactly, for an enemy or an ally. And there's no limit on the number of times I can use it, other than I have to cast a spell using a spell slot that targets at least one creature. So it's just the limit is my number of spell slots. Yeah. But you know, assuming especially when you get higher level and you got a ton of spell slots, like being able to do this once per turn is really quite nice. Then you get velocity shift. So you basically, like, this is actually my favorite feature in this. So when a creature starts its turn within 30 feet of me or moves up to within 30 feet of me, I can use my reaction to force it to make a charisma saving throw. And not a lot of monsters have a high charisma save, right? But I can use this on an ally as well. They can willingly fail this saving throw. But anyway, to teleport them 30 feet. And so I just love the idea of, like, it's Monty Python, right? Like, and then, like, it shows the guard sitting there, and then it goes back, and he's like still from the same distance.
What I think would be really cool is you're standing there and you've got things barreling down at you, and the barbarian is trying to get up to you. As soon as they hit within 30 feet, bam, they move 30 feet and they can continue their movement without having, like, they get basically an extra 30 feet of movement whenever you're ready, right? Like, I think that's really cool. Yeah, because you can choose to fail.
And this teleport is anywhere you can see, right? It doesn't have a qualifier of it has to be like a safe space.
Yep, unoccupied space in 30 feet.
So just unoccupied, which includes the air, right?
You know what? I mean,
sure. Yes, yeah, it does. It does include the air. Yeah,
or 30 feet underwater.
It take some fall damage. Includes the air.
Yeah, or underwater.
That might need to change.
It's an unoccupied space.
So the other thing
that's let's see, that's 3d10 fall damage. Yeah, it's 3d6. No, that's fantastic. So then the level 10 plus feature is null equation.
My favorite name of any of the features, by the way. The null equation.
Yeah, it has a very sort of big bad monologuing moment aspect to it. So once per turn, immediately after dealing damage to a creature, you can force them to make a con saving throw, which isn't great because that's tends to be the highest save amongst enemies, as written in D&D anyway, not homebrewed enemies, against your spell save DC. But if they fail, they have disadvantage on strength and dex saves, and their weapon attacks only deal half damage, and it lasts just for one turn until the start of your next turn. But that's really good. It's only proficiency bonus times per day. But still, it's like giving, it's better than, it's like giving somebody resistance, I guess, to, an enemy's weapon attack or something. But it works for whoever they decide to attack. So it's potentially really cool. And then finally, you get quantum tunneling, which is the most underwhelming ability of all of the abilities for this subclass.
But it's a quantum tunnel.
It's a quantum tunnel. I take that back, because you get resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. That in and of itself is quite good. The most damage that most creatures in D&D deal is bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, right? And it's not just like non-magical. It's bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. So now I'm like a barbarian raging, right? Which is nice. But then additionally, you can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain, but you take D10 force damage for every 5 feet you move while inside another creature or object. So I guess in a pinch, if you really needed to go through something, you could, but you're going to take damage for doing it.
It's like
That's a cool name,
Prismari.
but it's a letdown.
Prismari at level 1 gets to move through without provoking opportunity attacks, without taking damage. But this one doesn't even say that you don't provoke opportunity attacks moving through them.
It just says you can move through them. It doesn't say that you become some sort of like gaseous form and that is then impervious to, or But
it does say you can move through objects, because that allows you to walk through walls.
You go through walls. Yep. It'll hurt to do it, but you can do it.
I think it's a fun class. I think it sounds really fun.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the Quandrix, and that's the episode for the week.
Oh my gosh.
Strixhaven.
Sure, we went long.
Yeah.
So
long.
Love you guys.
Split it up into 5, right? It's 5 separate episodes and release them.
I am not one of those kinds of YouTubers.
Nope.
I'm just going to give you all the content at once.
Lucky.
It's going to be really weird when this episode's 20 minutes and we're saying it was more than
It just all of us talking except Colby.
Edit all of the dead space, all of the prepositions, all of the... Anyway, you guys are awesome. I love you. Thank you for watching. Thanks to my DMs for being here. As always, you guys, appreciate it. I always have a lot of fun chatting with you guys. And I'm super excited for the fact that in 2.5 hours, we're going to be playing Tales of Aneria. So anyway, we'll see you guys shortly. And we'll see you guys as soon as you watch the next video on this channel. So
bye.
Anyway, have a fantastic day. Talk to you soon.